I've spent the past few months shuffling my SIM card between the Pixel 7 and the iPhone 14 just to see how I can adapt to using each phone. At this point, I'm pretty comfortable diving straight into either Android or iOS, and for this one, I just want to share with you guys my experiences using these two smartphones. Let's get started. Alright, so if you guys have been on the channel before, then you've probably seen our other Pixel and iPhone content. And while I do use my Pixel 7 most of the time, I have been using the iPhone 14 as well. And I gotta say, it's been an interesting experience so far, switching between both devices on a regular basis. Now, just a heads up before you guys come after me with your pitchforks and torches, this video is going to be a very personal take based on my own use with each device. Now, if you want to check out our other content, I will drop some links in the description and the comments below. And with that said, let's get to the video. Alright, so I want to start with what I think the Pixel 7 does better than the iPhone. I've been using Pixel phones since the Pixel 3a and the 4a, the 4a 5G, and I've gotten pretty much used to the features that Google packs into their flagship smartphone line. For one, I do think that Google Assistant is a lot more refined compared to Siri, especially in terms of search result presentation and task assignments. I've often had trouble with Siri recognizing my voice commands, and in terms of web searches, Google Assistant has so far proven to be more accurate in general. That's not to say that Siri is a total failure, and it does certainly have its moments, but overall I've had a better experience with Google Assistant. In connection with this, there's also the issue of voice-to-text capabilities. I find that the smart voice-to-text speech function on Google's default keyboard is way better than on the iPhone. It's a lot more responsive and even detects the small differences in words spoken with my accent. Now, of course, this is a case-to-case basis, so your experience may vary, but most of the time, this is what I've noticed between the two devices. Another thing that I prefer on the Pixel 7, and I guess Android in general, is file management. While the iPhone 14 does have a file manager app, it's nowhere near as in-depth or flexible as what you get on Android, which even lets you access system files and stuff like that. There's also the issue of adding music onto the phone, which still relies on iTunes for management. For example, I airdropped more than 300 MP3 files from my MacBook to the iPhone 14, only to find out that I couldn't access the files either through the Apple Music app or even Apple's very own File Explorer. Compare this to the Pixel, where I can easily locate and move around nearly every file without the need to plug into a PC and use exclusive software to sync the files. Another big advantage of the Pixel 7 and I guess Android in general is the customizability when it comes to the user interface. It's not really a secret that there's more to be done with the Pixel in terms of customization. You can install different launchers, different icon packs, and while you can do this to an extent with iOS as it is today, it's still nowhere near the flexibility that we've gotten on the Pixel. Also, I do prefer the way that the Pixel handles notifications, as like file management, I can describe it as being more straightforward than the iPhone, which I still think needs some tweaking when it comes to how notifications are presented on your smartphone. Alright, so now that we've covered what the Pixel manages to do well, I want to move on to the factors that I think the iPhone manages to excel at. So first and foremost is battery life. Probably one of the things that stood out the most to me about using the iPhone 14 was the battery performance. It's pretty much known that everything in an iPhone is more often than not extremely optimized to strike a perfect balance between the software and the hardware. I do believe that this leads to overall better power efficiency. On my iPhone 14, I was able to go for a day and sometimes more on a single charge. I didn't have any of the battery anxiety that I got with the Pixel 7, which lately has been a bit lacking in terms of endurance, at least based on my usage. Now, I'm not sure if this is because of battery degradation or maybe it was a rogue system update, but I've been getting reduced battery endurance on the Pixel 7 compared to when I first got the device. And while screen on time isn't really a perfect indicator of how good a phone's battery performance is, I think it's pretty much safe to say that I've gotten longer SOT with the iPhone 14 while using pretty much the same apps that I did on the Pixel 7, with the exception of some system exclusive features, of course. Now, each platform handles battery usage differently, but in my experience, iOS, along with the A15 Bionic chip, was mostly impressive. I do think that the iPhone 14 also handles thermal management pretty well compared to my Pixel 7, which does tend to heat up or get warm during usage, especially when I'm using 5G, web browsing, and my screen is turned on. And I'm not really getting that kind of warmth with the iPhone 14 when I'm using it actively. It's not to say that it stays cold all the time, but it's considerably less warm than what I've noticed on the Pixel 7. Up next is camera customizability. Now, while I do love the Pixel 7 still photography, it's a great point-and-shoot device. The computational photography on the Pixel phones is excellent in terms of what we've gotten on smartphones so far, but sometimes its user-friendliness might seem a bit lacking for users who prefer a more in-depth and hands-on approach to photography. In other words, the iPhone 14's level of camera customization kind of exceeds the usual expectations of adequacy as far as smartphone camera apps are concerned. As I mentioned, Google does rely on computational photography to make every picture count, and while the same can be said of the iPhone, Apple does add some more tweaks for users to mess around with. For example, you do get photographic styles, which let you fine-tune the color and temperature of your pictures before you snap away, and each style can even be further customized to serve as a template for your next photo session. It's tiny stuff like these which add a bit of spice to an otherwise standard-looking camera app, but it's pretty much clear that Apple has given a ton of priority to maintaining its standing in mobile photography. Now, the same can be said for Face ID, which has been a very consistent experience for me. Now, the Pixel also comes with Face Unlock, but I noticed that it's not as fast and efficient as Apple's approach, which works even in dimly lit conditions. Face ID on the iPhone does stand out in terms of overall speed and consistency. Alright, so moving on, what is probably last but definitely not the least on this list is perhaps one of the iPhone's biggest strengths, which is its seamless compatibility with the rest of Apple's ecosystem. Now, this is not going to make a lot of sense for users who only use an iPhone without the rest of Apple's hardware lineup, but it goes without saying that the iPhone, as part of a larger device ecosystem, is a very competent piece of technology. Factors like the ability to instantly transfer files via AirDrop, being able to use your phone and MacBook to simultaneously handle phone calls and text messages, and the overall syncing of data in general just creates a user experience that all feels so seamless. On the other hand though, it would be really unfair to say that Android doesn't have these features. It most certainly does, and we've seen manufacturers like Samsung and Google put a lot of resources into building their own ecosystems. But regardless of this, it's pretty hard to deny that inter-device connectivity is something that the iPhone is able to pull off nicely compared to what we've seen on the market so far. Alright, so in closing, I have to say that I'm still not ready to leave Android just yet. I'm not going to sell my Pixel, I'm not going to keep it locked in the drawer for the rest of eternity, but I do think that credit should be given when it's due, and Apple's efforts has obviously yielded some terrific results, at least enough to impress me personally. On the other hand, however, there's still a lot of joy to be had with the Pixel 7, especially given how much freedom users have with the system. And for one, I still really love the camera on the Pixel 7. But yeah, the iPhone 13 is now without its merits, and coming from a longtime Android user, I think that it's still a great phone. And in the end, it's personal preference that always wins the day. Alright guys, so that does it for this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to check out our other content here on TVRY. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.